Santa's recession. The recession has hit us hard. Lots of people put on the dole. But where it's hit worst of all is way up at the North Pole. Santa was starting to worry as he drifted off into a nap, knowing if things didn't get better, they were all going to be in the crap. Many elves had to be laid off and had to find new homes, some finding new occupations as models for garden gnomes. But for those who stayed behind, the future looked very bleak. Santa had no money for food, and the elves were getting weak. Santa had to make a decision. His elves were starving and nearly dead. He needed to make some fast money, and became a drug dealer instead. The money started coming. Trafficking drugs on his sleigh. Ruthless with junkies who crossed him. They were kneecapped if they didn't pay. He liked his new occupation. His empire was starting to grow. The elves were now his best dealers. His favorite white powder was no longer snow. Now Christmas was getting nearer, and he had all the cash he would need. But the Christmas spirit had left him. It was replaced by money and greed. While the world prepared for Christmas, Santa laughed and hung out with thugs. This year the kids won't get presents. Instead he would be pushing them drugs. But one elf had turned informer and grossed Santa to the FBI. He was put into police protection. If Santa found out, he'd surely die. At a drug deal the police set an ambush. When they heard Santa was on his way, they pounced the second he landed, and found tons of drugs in his sleigh. The police were so disappointed. Santa's evil, drugged up and smelled boozy. But while they were stunned by this revelation, Santa pulled out a shotgun and Uzi. High on his drugs he shot all the cops. Then jumped in the sleigh and started to drive. Ho ho ho, he suddenly shouted. "You'll never take me alive." But as Santa flew back to the North Pole, the SWAT team were pleased with themselves, because they got there before him, and shot dead all the drug-dealing elves. Santa was forced into exile. He knew he couldn't be found. He had no means to make any money. They'd blown up his drug-making compound. Santa was alone in the North Pole, filled with remorse and fear, paranoid from taking the drugs. All he had left was his sleigh and reindeer. He sat down and worked out his options, wondering how he became such a sinner, realizing his belly was rumbling. Then shot dead poor Rudolph for dinner. As he chomped his way through the venison, something had passed him by. If he was eating all the reindeer, how the hell was he going to fly? The news had traveled the world. How Santa was a cop killing smackhead. How he was now on the run, and his druggy elves were all shot dead. Santa, with no drugs or food, fell unconscious in his sleigh, as the snow fell all around him. Was this to be his last waking day? He woke up in his bed with a startle. Mrs. Claus had slapped him around the head. "I've told you once before, fatty. No cheese before going to bed."